some of the jobs that I can do without, but still carry on my program. For instance, I do the categories of people who will be affected in this regard is data capturers, lay counselors, clinical associate, social auxiliary workers, pharmacists and pharmacy assistants, nurses, etc. Our assessment as a country is going to go and look at those. Can we, for the time being, do without this and that category? But there is a category that we can't do with. Don't we have more people here than perhaps we need? Do you need data capturers? What data are they capturing, and what will happen if such data is not captured or is captured by? Those are the things that we'll have to do, and they take a little bit of time than the few days for which we have been living with this problem, and even not being very clear about exactly what is wanted. The issue of 6-MMD, quite a number of you have asked it, including yourself, Chairperson, with CCMDD versus 6-MMD and 3-MMD. I just don't want us to confuse issues here, and let me explain them. CCMDD means Central Chronic Medication Dispensing and Distribution. It simply talks to the manner in which you receive your ARVs, because primarily before CCMDD, everybody used to go to hospital or a clinic every month to collect their medication and queue. Some of them queue for 6 hours, only take a package of medicine because it's just a repeat dispensing. So the Central Chronic Medication and Dispensing and Distribution talks to where do you get your ARVs. Is it possible to get them outside the normal clinic and hospital? And indeed, that's what's happening, whereby people who are on ARVs, and only those who are stable, you can't do it to everybody. A person who is stable, who just spends, goes to a hospital every month just to collect treatment because they've been stable, those are the ones who fall under CCMDD. Their names are supplied to a service provider who is given ARVs by the state and package them and say, Dr. Mtwaledi, this is your package, and you said you'll collect it at such and such a station. It might be the same clinic, whereby when you arrive there, you don't queue. You just go to where you collect your package. It might be a local shop, it might be an NGO, it might be any place where your ARVs can be delivered by this service provider and you correct them. Now, on the other hand, there is something called 3-MMD or 6-MMD, meaning 6 multi-month dispensing or 3 multi-month dispensing. This is whereby your ARVs you are given a 3-month supply. Under CCMDD, you may even be given a 1 month supply, only that is delivered where to the address which you have given. But 3-MMD means whether you collect at the clinic or using CCMDD going to collect at the address given, you are given a package for 3 months. That is 3-MMD. Now, on World AIDS Day, there was a march by people living with HIV and AIDS and other sectors in Sanak who demanded 6-MMD because they were saying some people who are working do not have time. Others actually are not able to come every 3 months. If they are very stable, can we give them ARVs every 6 months? The Deputy President accepted that memo, that this is good. When Dr. Rue said they had a program in Malawi, yes, some countries are already doing this. And we said there is nothing stopping us from doing 6-MMD. So whether you are following 6-MDD, collecting medicine at a particular address, you collect for 6 months, no longer for 3 months. I thought it's important to clarify that. The issue of retirement for doctors and nurses, the issue of retirement has been mentioned as one of the strategies to deal with unemployment and a bulging compensation for employees budget. It's a system that Treasury came up with. They said they've budgeted 11 billion rand for people who want to take early retirement. Or I suspect that's going to be further clarified during the budget. But it's an issue that Treasury is working on. The issue of employing people from other countries, I'll take it together when I answer the question to Honorable Honorable Zungula. I'll come to that later. The issue of I skipped some page here and now I'm going to confuse people. Please forgive me. Please forgive me. I am actually coming to the questions answered by Honorable Zungula about our sovereignty. I totally agree with you, Honorable Zungula. I have seen in the World Health Assembly countries that largely depend on another country for funding. I've seen them being unable to take stands which otherwise they would like to have taken. And I'm saying so because sometimes you sit together in a meeting of the African region and you agree on a thing, but when you arrive and there are these funding countries, you will find yourself unable to oppose them or support a policy they don't like. I've seen that, so I agree with you on this issue of sovereignty. That's very important, especially for the African continent. Now, the issue of why we are not buying ARVs here, I think, honorable members, it might be important, I know it's already late, for me to give the history of this because it's a little bit more complicated than members think, and yet it's important. When we were in Davos 2 weeks ago, the Honorable Minister of DTIT with his DG asked for a meeting to discuss this issue, local buying, or as we say, local as lekker. Whether it's something that we're ignoring. I want to give you the history of this thing. There was a move to establish the state-owned pharmaceutical, which was later called Taylor, which is owned by the Department of Health. Somewhere around 2007, 2008, the Auditor General said no. Health cannot own a family produces medicine they themselves are going to procure. It's a conflict of interest. So the whole issue of being a state pharmaceutical company was taken to the Department of Science and Technology. And the minister then was Minister Naledi Pandor. And she approached me about this issue. But before she could do so, I was called to a meeting at Union Building where one of the pharmaceutical companies, let me not name it because they didn't give me permission. One of the pharmaceutical companies came there with unions, including COSATU, very strong senior members of COSATU. They came to me and said, now that you are launching the HIV counseling and testing campaign, which you believe is going to be the biggest in the world, you must buy your ARVs here at home. And the company was saying, we will produce, and was telling COSATU, if this doesn't happen, we are going to create jobs elsewhere in another country where we buy ARVs. It's a position that we accepted very well. But we sat down to make calculations. Colleagues, it does not mean that if you produce ARVs in one country, the other country will produce them at a similar cost. They are very different cost structures. Now we sat down and calculated, and it was found that there's no country now on earth. Then, let me say then, because I don't know now, but I don't think it has changed. There was no country that can outcompete India with prices. It can't. Because they don't have labor cost or labor rights like the one we are having in our country and many other things that have been demanded in the workplace by unions. They don't have that in India. So they were producing HIV, ARVs very cheap. And you can tell me that no, but buying here locally, even if it's more expensive, we still have to do it because we are supporting local jobs. That is true. But what happened that year, I think it was 2011, we then called the late Minister Bravin Gordon to come and join the meeting. And we did calculations. And we found at that time, remember I'm talking about 2011, 2012, that for us to put the number of people who want to put on ARVs and buying locally, we're going to need 16 billion rand more than if we buy in India. 16 billion. And Minister Bravin Gordon then said, no, we don't have that amount of money. Remember when we started, we wanted only 3.5 billion. Today we're at 46.8. And at that time, we said, if we buy outside India, we need 16 billion rand, including buying in our own country, 16 billion. The Treasury said such an amount of money does not exist, unfortunately. Now, the Department of Science and Technology said, before they start producing in GitLab, we need to write a letter of intent, promising them that we'll buy from them. But we needed Treasury to assure us 16 billion rand will be paid for. And Treasury said that amount of money is nowhere to be found. Now, that situation has not changed, colleagues. It's still like that. The second thing I need to add, because you are political leaders, which you need to know, we have got many stringent rules in our country, which countries like India don't have. That if you produce, you must certify this and that. You must have such and such a regulation, you must have this and that. Many developing countries don't have that. And I've complained many times about this. That's why I'm saying it openly. For instance, we have got PFMA, which I believe is a compliance-based rule. You have to comply, comply, comply. And I argued that it is not developmentally based. Now, when you say so, people believe no. You want to open space for corruption because PFMA stop people from being corrupt. And all we said, and I think Minister Nzimande, when you are still in higher education, was agreeing with me on this matter, that when you are still developing, there are certain niceties you can't go around with. So you don't put a law that wants compliance, 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 and there's no development, development, development. Those are some of the issues that needs to be resolved politically. So unless they are resolved, India will keep on being ahead together with China. For instance, India produces their own APIs, which if a pharmaceutical company in South Africa, our own pharmaceutical company in South Africa, wants to produce ARVs, they go to India and China and APIs. If the US, that's where they are buying their APIs, these huge pharmaceutical companies. What are APIs? It's active pharmaceutical ingredients. You need them to start putting them together to make a medicine or ARV or even a vaccine. Now, India and China produce them in large amounts because they've liberalized their system. If we have to start doing the ET in South Africa, I can tell you it's extremely expensive with all the laws that are there. The issue of impact on 95, these are some of the things that we need to assess. But what I can tell you, which the decision we've taken, was that no matter how difficult things become, nobody must be allowed from taking ARVs. We must do everything in our power, that regardless of who is affected, maybe in terms of the workers and the who are employed by PEFA in the districts, what we must guarantee is that nobody who's on ARVs must stop. Because if that happens, colleagues, that's going to be very, very dangerous. To individuals, it's going to be disastrous to individuals and to the country. Why? When you are on ARVs and you suddenly stop, you are going to develop what you call drug resistance, HIV and AIDS or TB. You'll definitely develop that. And once you develop that, it's extremely expensive to cure. For instance, people who have got extreme drug-resistant TB, The state must pay 800,000 rand for each one of them, just for treatment. We don't want that. But secondly, one should develop drug-resistant TB or HIV and AIDS. When you transmit it to another person, you don't transmit the simple one, you transmit this drug resistance, and it starts growing in a particular country. The other question I want to answer from Honorable Zungula is the issue of foreign nationals employed in our country. I think that this question be answered very clearly. Before, during rainy days, when our economy was not in town, anybody from any part of the world who wanted to internship in South Africa was allowed. We could easily, remember I said internship is statutory. They just come in and you place them. That's where the work placement belongs, on internship, you place them. So much that some countries even begged us to stop doing it. I was in a SADC meeting in 2010 in Eswatini where they confronted me about this issue. That South Africa is a stronger economy. Can it stop employing people from our countries, especially for internship? We tried our best at that time, but people were just coming on their own. And some were challenging us constitutionally that I'm not bound to my country. I want to work in South Africa. And so you can't make a deal with my country that you can't allow me to work here. This matter even went to the World Health Assembly, where all the ministers of health met under WHO. And WHO said developed countries must stop recruiting countries from developing countries. But when you finish the World Health Assembly, ministers of labor also go to Geneva under the ILO, International Labour Organization. Then they said every individual, including a doctor or a nurse, whoever, every individual has got the right to sell their labor power anywhere they want, even across borders, and they must not be impeded by borders. Then they passed that resolution. As you can see, these are two UN agencies collide against each other. But be that as it may, are we still able to? No. Some years back, we decided that we don't have enough money anymore. So we must give priority to South Africans, as we have said. But somebody from a foreign country, not from South Africa, went to ask advice from a judge that were discriminating against them. That judge phoned me. She's late now, but because I get no permission to say what was discussed with her, I'll just I'll just mention that it was a judge who confronted me and said, but you know that what you are doing is unconstitutional. Why are you doing it? And I said, Honorable Judge, please guide me. Can I, as a father in a family, be able to feed the children next door when I'm unable to feed my own children? Does the law force me to do that? That leave your own children and go to feed the children next door? I really asked that question. And she said, what do you mean? I explained that we don't have money for our own people here. So should we be accommodating other people who come and say we are discriminating against them? The judge said, no, we're not saying so. All we are saying is don't do it arbitrarily. Please devise a policy which must go to the National Health Council because it's a statutory body and be adopted there officially so that when anybody takes you to court, you show that policy. We developed that policy, Honorable Zungula, which is that internship, one, we give first preference to every South African who studied here in South Africa, and you accommodate all of them first. If there is any money left, then you accommodate South Africans who studied elsewhere in the world, but they are South African citizens. They become number two. Number three, if there is any other person of another nationality, but who did their studies here, stayed here for 6 years and studied in our medical schools, they were admitted and studied in our medical school, they become number three. Then number four becomes those who are from other countries and studied elsewhere except in South Africa. They are the last. At the moment, the internship where everybody has been absorbed is only two groups of people, South Africans and permanent residents. We could only accommodate those outsiders who were not able to accommodate everybody. That is the current situation. It's not there only, Honorable Chairperson and Honorable Members. You are aware that in order to come and work in South Africa, whether as in medicine, engineering, law, or any other profession, in order to come and work here for other countries, Home Affairs must produce a government gazette that shows the scarce skills. In other words, that these skills are scarce and we are short of people. And I must explain, a scarce skill is not a skill that is important only. It's a skill that is needed by the economy, but is in short supply in the country. Now, the Department of Home Affairs does not have capacity to develop that, but the law says they are the ones who must gazette it. So this matter is taken to the Department of Higher Education, which also does not have capacity. They ask the Human Science Research Council. That goes into the labor market, do labor market surveys, and see if are needed to conclude in short is network. And network, as you know, has labor, government, business, and community. They see look at it. Once they finalize it to take it to the presidency, if they pass it, then the Minister of Home Affairs will gazette it. Now, the last gazetting, when these changes took place, was that doctors were removed from that list. It's no longer a scarce skill. It was removed. Even they agreed when they were giving the figures, meaning you can no longer, meaning Home Affairs cannot give a work visa to a person who wants to work here as a doctor who is from another country, except, and please underline this exception, except if he's a specialist. I'm not a specialist. I'm an ordinary MBCHB. Specialists are people like Dr. Letlape there. He was an ophthalmologist, a specialist. All of them, whether a gynecologist, ophthalmologist, surgeon, orthopedic surgeon, pediatrician, all of them who are specialists can be hired in the country. Home Affairs will be forced to give them a visa if they can produce that there is somebody who is offering them a job. But if you come as an ordinary doctor like me with MBCHB, who can no longer give you a work visa because you are no longer a scarce skill. Same as nursing, nurses were removed from the list of scarce skill of Home Affairs, and only 4 groups of nurses remain. And so if they are employed, don't be surprised, the law allows them. That is a nurse. All over the world, a theater nurse is a scarce skill, even in developing countries. That is a high care nurse. That is an ICU nurse. Anywhere in the world, these 3 groups of nurses are in demand, and they can go and work anywhere in the world. In our country, they even refuse for the state to employ them because they are in demand. They prefer to go to one private hospital or public and be employed at a fee for a week or 2 weeks and go elsewhere where they are needed. So they play around like that. You won't find them in large numbers in our public hospitals. You won't. And for that reason, those who come from other countries with such skills, Home Affairs will have to give them a visa to come and work here because they've got a scarce skill that is wanted. So that's why you may find people from other countries inside here. So for nurses, I forgot psychiatric nurses, by the way. I mentioned the 3, theater nurse, high care nurse, and the ICU nurse. It's all over the world. In our country, that includes psychiatric nurses. So only these 4 are scarce skills. So those you find working in the country, unless they came years ago, if they came recently, you must know that they came through that process and the law allows it. Honorable Dr. Kaliru, look, the letter from PEPFAR, which the Charge Defense emphasized when we met on Monday, says now everything can go back to normal until after 90 days, except In other words, in areas that are life-saving. And they put exceptions there. And they said, except abortions, nobody must use American money to perform an abortion, whether it's legal or otherwise. They can't. Number two, you can't perform a surgical operation for transgender people. You simply can't. Number three, American money cannot be used for LGBTQWTI+. It can't. Now, the question we're having is this. If in this 27 districts, somebody who is a health worker is doing all these things, do they lose their job, or do they go and say, nurse or counselor or what, continue doing your job except abortions, transgender, and LGBTQ? We could not get a clear answer to that. Secondly, we ask a second question. If you say American money cannot be used for LGBTQI+, and we do the counseling and testing, and somebody who falls within that category is transgender, test HIV positive, can they not be helped? In other words, can they not be tested? Because ARVs will give them South African money after all. But can I tell a nurse that, no, this one is LGBTQ, you are being paid by PEFA, you can't test them, even if it's life-saving. Maybe the person is very sick and all that. Now, all those are not very clear. They said we must refer them back to the US to clarify, and we have asked the DG to write a letter in that regard. I've already answered the question of 6mmMD. I will now move to the entire Dr. How are we going to find this 4.6 billion? That is the answer that South Africa still has to give. I gave it to the highest decision-making body in the country, which is Lekgotla. And the issue of research in the country, the Department of Higher Education, because many research institutions are funded from the US, are still looking into what effects. That includes Minister Blade in Zimande, because he deals a lot with research in this department. Now, the issue of private sector having to, how does it square up? If they are contributing 2%, but there are 15% of people who are ARV, sometimes we use the figure of 14%. It doesn't square up, honorable members, and it's one of the issues in the NHI Act that we're complaining about. For instance, private sector never treats TB, meaning if you've got a medical aid and you go to a doctor and they diagnose TB, you come back to the public sector to get your treatment. They won't give you there because they don't deal with it at all. And part of the reason is that the treating TB is a very expensive exercise. And many people in the private sector don't want to spend that much money because they will never get it back. I gave you an example that once a person develops extreme drug-resistant TB, he's going to need 800,000 rand. Medical aid will never agree to pay for that. So all the people who come with TB, they are treated by the state, even if they've got medical aids. That's quite unfortunate. But remember, some medical aids, in fact, I don't know if there's any. I'm speaking correct from the staff members here in the department. They don't even deal with contraception. They don't pay for it. You rather fall pregnant, go to a backstreet abortion, and get very sick. You put in the ICU, they charge you 100,000 rand medical to pay. But if you say, please give me a packet of contraceptives for 60 rand, they refuse. Now, those are some of the things that we really believe must be changed, because that's not the way to run a healthcare system. And if you check the NHI Act, we are outlining some of these changes that we need to make sure that such changes take place in our country. Because I can assure you today, I know the media ridicules me when I say so. If we implement NHI the way we did, I mean, the way the Act says we should, and spend the money equitably, we won't be in this position where we depend on other countries. I'm saying that statement very clearly because I'm very sure of the figures. And why am I sure? Because in South Africa, we're already spending 8.5% of the GDP on health, which amount to 570 billion at the moment. But the manner in which the money is distributed is that 51% goes to only 14 or 15% of the population, depending on which figure you are using. These are people on medical aid. Me and you, everybody on this platform falls within that 14%. And we are spending 51% of the total healthcare expenditure on ourselves. And the remaining 49% must be shared by 86% of the population. That is a very, very serious problem. If we can't resolve it, then we'll be sitting every day asking about where are we going to get money? Why do we want American handouts, etc.? So we need to be very serious about exactly what we want. What is that which we want for our country? I'm saying so, colleagues, because we are spending more money than even rich countries. China is still at 6-point-something% of their GDP on health. Russia is still at 7-point-something. India is even low at 3-point-something, but they've got better health outcomes than us because of the manner in which we distribute the money. It was us and Brazil before 1990. Brazil dropped this thing in 1990 and introduced universal health coverage. They are now spending 9% of their GDP, but they've got huge and big health outcomes, and they are running the biggest universal health coverage system in the world. So we need to think very carefully every time when we debate this thing that no, NHI is going to be expensive. We must understand what we are missing if we don't do that. The issue of analysis of the money when posts are frozen, Dr. Letlab. Yes, we never did that, but what we know is once Treasury frees the money, it's used elsewhere, it never comes to us. You also mentioned issues like RWAPs that they've got no value. These are the things that we're insisting that must be reviewed, because you are right. How did RWAPs come about? It was COSATU who in the early days of our democracy came to cabinet and said the public service doesn't pay a lot of money to public servants. Can we allow them to go and do work outside the public service? That's why it was called RWAPs. Remunerative work outside the public service, RWAPs. That's what it means. Is the situation still like that? Are public servants still underpaid? No. After OSD, they are not. So why do we keep it? So we want it reviewed very seriously. And it is not the only one, including rural allowance and all that, committed overtime. They need to be reviewed, and we have asked that that situation must take place. Honorable members, to finish up the issues, because some of the questions have been repeated. What will be the impact of PEPFAR on NHI? As far as I'm concerned, there won't be impact. It's the other way around. The question should have been, Honorable Mare, what will be the impact of NHI on PEPFAR? And I've already answered that. That once we introduce NHI, universal health coverage, with the amount of money we're already spending in health as a country, that means as public and private, if we distribute that money equitably, then whatever decision another country takes, it won't affect us as much as it's affecting us. And it will be wrong to say countries don't need help from others. They do. All over the world, we are a globalized world. For instance, during COVID, there are countries that will need more help than others. And that's how the Global Fund is working. So let's not write off the issue of getting foreign funding. And why am I saying so? Global Fund will call a replenishment round and say countries, depending on their financial strength, must contribute money to Global Fund. Even us who are poorer countries will contribute, and that money will be put together in a fund. Then they will look for the country that is suffering the most. Which country has got the heaviest load of HIV, TB, and malaria? Most money will go there, and that's how we got that money. But even us will have contributed in the rounds. South Africa contributes to Global Fund every year. It's a sort of a stock fair that let's bring money together. Once the money is here, we distribute it according to need. But each one contributes the money according to their ability. And I found that system very, very, working very, very well. So we cannot just exclude the issue of getting funding somewhere. It's very important. So when I'm saying when you have got NHI, we won't need that, I'm not saying we must totally exclude ever getting money from somewhere. And Honorable Mare, the issue of moonlighting, this is one of the issues that's being reviewed. What you said is true. A nurse who moonlights in the private sector, and of course, many nurses may not like this, but it's the truth, and we have got to tell the truth. When they go to a private sector, there are rich people there who know their rights, who demand respect. And you will have to smile all the time because you have got to be very careful. They know their rights. But the following day, when you come back to the public sector, you find an old lady, very old, who doesn't even have a house, sleep in the streets and all that, and you are very tired. You are not going to smile to that person in the way you are smiling for the whole night. You just get irritated. Can Honorable Maria please mute, Chairperson? I'm asking on your behalf because there is some noise coming from there and I can see her mic is not muted. Please. So she is right about this issue of moonlighting, that it needs to be looked at. And she asked if we are still going to have hundreds of funerals. No, we will never allow ourselves to go there because that will be completely disastrous for our country. You are aware that we brought down maternal mortality dramatically because of running the biggest HIV/AIDS counseling and treatment program in the world. Maternal mortality only went high during COVID, is coming down now dramatically. And so we wouldn't really allow a situation where we go back to where we were. Yeah. Honorable Lomo, you said something I don't understand. That 7 years ago, we said medical specialists were not paid very well. And yeah, I got confused because, Honorable Lomo, since OSD, medical specialists are paid huge amounts of money. If you want me to say that, you can go and check with the...
I said that exactly. No. I said that exactly. I said that exactly. They are paid well. And that should have dissuaded them to do RWAPs. I said they've been paid well.
Okay, fine. No, my apologies. I didn't understand you. And this is causing us a problem. In fact, let me tell you, honorable members, what has caused the issue of OSD, what is the management of health. If you are a senior doctor and you are on OSD, you don't want to take a management post. You refuse to take it because you are going to earn less. So unlike in the past where a superintendent of a hospital is the most senior doctor in the hospital, today the situation has turned around. People who take management position to be a CEO of the hospital are who get little from RWAP, I mean from OSD. The senior staff, professors and specialists and all that, you will never find them being a CEO of a hospital. In fact, most of the people who become CEOs come from the nursing profession. And when they arrive there, they are junior, and when they give orders, doctors started looking down on them. But if you tell that doctor to come and take that management position, they don't agree because RWAPs are much more than management position. So this destroyed the whole structure of management of the public healthcare system in the country, whereas that is not happening in the private sector. And that's where one of the biggest differences are, which people don't understand when they see the whole lot of problems and challenges of management in the public sector. And that's why we have asked the Department of Finance and Public Service and Administration, please relook at this issue of OSD, relook at RWAPs, relook at some of these issues that were made in 1994 when the situation was completely different from what it is today. Thank you very much.
Are there other members that have been delegated to answer some of the questions, Minister? You exhausted all of them. You are muted, Minister. You are muted.
No, there was a question about 10% of global fund to pay for ARVs. How much money is that? I'm sure that can be answered by the DG and the CFO. I won't be able to answer it.
Okay, DG
and CFO.
Yes.
How much is this 10% to buy ARVs from PEPFAR?
Yeah, yes. No, thank you, Minister. I can answer that one. I've already checked. It's about 466 million per annum, which are, because it's a 3-year cycle, which works out to about 1.4 billion over a 3-year cycle. But per annum, we spend about 466 million rands, which is a 10% to buy the ARVs. And Minister, there's one last technical one on zinc and the codes, which I would request Professor Crisp. It was a very specific technical one to deal with it, that the codes are in the US, if the Minister and the Chair allows. Otherwise, the Minister has covered everything.
Good afternoon, Honourable Chair, members of the committee, Honourable Minister, DG and colleagues. Yeah, thanks very much. I can confirm that the source codes for zinc are not in the US. They are in the Department of Health. They are also with our service provider who manages the program for us. zinc is currently operational in 31 districts, not just the 26 districts. And the zinc data that is not live on the system in, on a directly contacted real-time basis, the data comes from the other districts by various means, including flash drives, to get it into the zinc. So all the data from the whole CCMDD across the country comes to zinc, and we're in the process at the moment of working out a plan to make sure that nothing stops in the CCMDD and zinc. But we can confirm that we have the source codes. Thank you very much, DG. Thanks, Minister.
Okay. Yeah, honourable members, I think we need to agree. I was noting that extensively the questions that we raised have been answered, some of them to completion, others still have some work in progress, because as the Minister was indicating, we are dealing with a matter that is not completely finalized. Issues that are done by, there's here and there Minister who still have to consult and also continue to engage the Treasury. Provinces will also have to make do and prioritize. But this was actually very helpful as to what is the plan. And strongly so from the club that maybe if there's a call and there's a need to support the plan, it will also be an issue that the Minister will raise with this portfolio committee. And as parliamentarians, we will then have the responsibility to give that support in the light of what we are actually experiencing. May I check if there's any other member who still wishes that they engage? Otherwise, I think from what we asked in the first round, not really giving you a second round, we have really had extensive responses from the Minister and the department. And in that light, I'll just check if there are, and there are none. Yeah. Thank you very much, Minister, for that. And we will continue to engage. And if there's any new information coming in through you, some of it might come through from us through parliamentary questions, but you are also free to raise this matter. You will be guiding us whether maybe in the near future you might be making an executive statement on especially the first matter, or maybe some of the issues will be covered through your discussions in the Khutlas, and they may come up at another level higher than yourself. But that part we'll hear from you as we go along, because it is important that we take all of us into confidence, including some of the people that might wish. But we leave that to you to decide and to guide as we go on with this matter. Your closing remarks, Minister?
No, honourable members, thank you very much. But I believe as members of parliament, some of the issues you raised here as consent, you can sit down and take decision about them. Like Honourable Letlabe, unfortunately, I know he must be gone now, raised something extraordinary is because of his background as a specialist and a former president of the Health Professions Council. He understands these things. He understands, for instance, this issue called RWAP, which was so important in 1994, how it's affecting the healthcare system now. So we would like, when we review these things, some of the support or initiation to come from you as members of parliament to help the department and say, look for this issue, look for that issue, because some of these issues may be extremely complex. And the fact that they were accepted in 1994, people might believe that it must still go on and on and on. For instance, I gave you an example of something called rural allowance. When people were refusing to go to rural areas and they have to have a special allowance to do that, does it have any value anymore in the country? Should we go on with it? The other one is community service. There was no community service during my time. You just do internship and you go elsewhere when you finish internship. Community service was introduced specifically to push doctors who have qualified to serve the community at least for 1 year before they go elsewhere. That was the aim of community service. Is it still needed now? Of course, the answer is why for? Because who will refuse to go there, we no longer have that luxury. So should we keep something like community service? And we're asking that it must also go to be reviewed. And because all this the review, and we want you to go also enter that fray in terms of reviewing some of these issues that have been agreed upon long ago. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Minister, we will definitely support that, and also we are right, we can do it individually. As a portfolio committee, there are hospitals in KwaZulu-Natal who qualify for a rural allowance. They are not rural, but because somebody did not have what name to give to it in jail hospital, because it is in an area where it is engulfed by violence. Prince Msheni, there was violence around those areas. That violence is now gone, and that issue was. Let's not give them as whatever is a violence hospital, but let them qualify on the basis of what we call a rural, even if they are not rural, but so that they can benefit. So now, no more violence in those areas, which is different than the rest of the country, but they still have that qualification of getting the allowance. I see Dr. Tlhape want to qualify or maybe endorse that we will have an internal discussion as a portfolio committee. Dr. Tlhape?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Minister, that I'm still here and we will take up those issues from our side so that we can assist where we can, because we have that responsibility.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Honorable members, thank you very much for engaging, and right up to this moment, we started the meeting at 4 o'clock, and thanks to the Minister and his team for the responses that you have given to us on this matter. We would therefore want to bring this meeting to a close and adjourn for now. See you in the sauna tomorrow in the evening. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, honorable members. Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Recording stopped.
firstly, that the Secretary of State has issued another order that they are suspending the first order until a review has been completed in 90 days. So we believe we are still on that one. Next. Yes. Colleagues, you know, I wanted you to move on. Can you go back, please, to slide 3? Yes. Colleagues, I think it will be important for the honorable members to understand the involvement of PEPFAR in their country, where and how. Firstly, you are aware that there are 63 million people who are living in South Africa, and estimates from UNAIDS, the United Nations agency that deals with HIV and AIDS, their estimate is that 7.8 million people in South Africa are living with HIV and AIDS, which number is the biggest in the whole world. Now, our 9 provinces are divided into 52 health districts. Now, PEPFAR decided to choose 27 of burden districts in our country, which happen to be in 8 provinces only. As you can see there from the screen, the whole of Northern Cape is blank. It's not because there's no HIV and AIDS there, but because all their districts, all of them, none of them qualify as a high burden district. The PEPFAR was using particular criteria for a district to qualify as a high burden district. So they chose those 27, which exist in only 8 provinces. Now, the other districts they did not choose. It does not mean there's no HIV AIDS there. It does not mean there's no activity, but it simply means that we are doing that on our own as South Africa without the involvement of PEPFAR. Next. Yes. Now, just to give you an idea, the districts are as follows. In the Eastern Cape is Alfred Nzo, Amatole, Buffalo City, Chris Hani, and OR Tambo. That's where PEPFAR is involved. In the Free State is Silvio Puso and Thabo Mfutsanyana. In Gauteng is the city of Johannesburg, the city of Tshwane, city of Ikuruleni, and Siliben districts. In KwaZulu-Natal is eThekwini, Herikwala, King Cetshwayo, Ugu, Ngungundlovu, Uthugela, and Zululand. And in Limpopo is Capricorn and Mopani. In Mpumalanga is Ehlanzeni, Khertsiband and Kangala. In Northwest is Bujanala, Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, and Ngaka Mudiri Mulima. In the Western Cape is the city of Cape Town. In summary, as you can see, KwaZulu-Natal has got 7 districts. Eastern Cape has got 5. Gauteng has got 4. Mpumalanga and Northwest each have got 3. Limpopo and Free State each have got 2. Western Cape has got 1 and 0 in the Northern Cape, as I've said. Thank you. Let's move. Yeah. Now, colleagues, as you know, where are we in the fight against HIV and AIDS? You are aware that the UN came with an idea or a concept called 95-95-95, or rather in an international AIDS conference which was held in Melbourne, in Australia. They introduced the idea of 90-90-90, and later on, it was moved to 95-95-95, meaning if in any one setting, 95 of the people who are HIV positive have tested and they know their status. And out of those who know their those who are HIV positive, 95% of those who are positive are put on ARVs. And out of those who are on ARVs, 95% of them have got viral suppression, meaning they can no longer transmit the virus from one person to the other. When that happens, a country or an area or a region can claim that they have eliminated, not eradicated, but eliminated HIV/AIDS as a public health threat. So where are this score? We are at 96, 79, 93, meaning on the first of people testing and knowing their status who have exceeded the recommendation of the UN, were already at 96. But on the second one, we are still at 79, meaning the people who are on treatment are 79 of those who tested, are 79% rather, of those who tested HIV positive. And out of those who are on ARVs, the 79% who are on ARVs, 93% of them are virally suppressed, which means they can't transmit the virus. I will visit this a little bit later. Let's move. Yes, now just to give you further details of how the response of on HIV in the 27 priority districts. As you can see there, we have gone province by province. In the second column, total HIV response staff. I will just read at the bottom there, the total. It shows the response staff in the 27 districts and the total there, which is 271,608. These are the staff members who are on the ground every day fighting HIV. And I'm sorry, Chairperson, I need to correct again. There is a media house which said, Mutsualedi said, in the 27 district, there are 271,606 people who are HIV positive or who are living with HIV and AIDS. I want to correct that if the media house is listening. 271,606 are the staff members who every day wake up in the 27 districts to go and do battle in trying to control and bring an end to HIV and AIDS. Out of that total, 256,452 are employed by the National Department of Health and getting their salary from the National Department of Health. That leaves us with a balance of 15,154. These are the people who are on the ground in the 27 districts but are paid for by PEPFAR. As you can see, the highest number is in Gauteng at 6,090, followed by KZN at 3,079, followed by Eastern Cape at 1,585, followed by Western Cape at 1,117, and then followed with the Free State having now 333 and the second list at 860. But if you check, if there is going to be any crisis in terms of our engagement with PEPFAR on these 15,000 people, you do realize that it will be in 4 provinces, which is Gauteng, KZN, Eastern Cape, and Western Cape. Can we move? Yes. Now that is just showing some of the operations that might be affected. It's like the people exposure prophylaxis, implementation of quality improvement like Operation Putuma, jobs on the staff in the district, and etc., etc. So it's quite a number of things that might be affected, but in different ways. And maybe we'll visit that specifically later. Thank you. Can we move? Yeah. Now, here are the cost implications. Firstly, as you can see in the 4 columns there, the first column is an item of what people are there. The second one is personnel numbers. The third column is categories of people. And finally, the costs. As you can see, in the National Department of Health, there are 24 staff members. We are on something called COAG, meaning cooperative agreement. That means in a cooperative agreement between the South African government or the National Department of Health and PEPFAR, those 24 people are in the department. They are technical advisors, they are directors, There are deputy directors, assistant directors, and administration officers. The total salary bill is 22,697,000. The second group is a total staff of 196. That 220 is the 196 plus the 24. But so the second category is the 196 staff members who have been seconded to the programs as mentioned there. CCMDD means Central Chronic Medication Distribution and Dispensing, which has got 31 staff members, etc. And there are technical assistants and program support staff. Their total salary is 197,449,681. Then the body are in the office. That means the 15,154 people which I've mentioned, which are in the 27 districts and being paid for by mpofu. These are doctors, data capturers, professional nurses, lay counselors, clinical associates, social auxiliary workers, pharmacist assistant, staff nurses, and even pharmacists. Their total bill is 4,419,502,156 rand. And as you can see there, the total staff that is paid for by 1,374 with a total salary bill of 4.6 billion, as you can see there. Now, at the bottom is something very, very important, that South Africa buys its own ARVs with 10% support staff from Global Fund. That means 90% of the ARVs that are consumed in South Africa is money from our own fiscus. But 10% of that is paid for by the Global Fund, which you all know was established to global HIV, AIDS, TB, and malaria, and is based in Geneva. This is the meeting which Dr. Parr said at 5:30 is going to attend, because he's a member of that Global Fund. So Global Fund and our own fiscus are responsible for buying ARVs. The sums there, the cost there, which is for salaries, but also for operational costs. Thank you. Next. Yeah, this is very small slide, but I'll just summarize. Forget about the top where they are showing the bars, the red bars there. Just go to the bottom. It shows the amount of money over the 3-year period spent on our HIV. That means the total cost of our battle against HIV. It shows that it was 44.4 billion in the financial year 23-24. Now, in this present financial year, in which we are, which is about to end, is 46.8 billion, and in the financial year, which is due to start, we will be spending 48 billion. Next. Yeah, now, these are the funding streams. From the South African government, as we said, our own treasury, we're contributing 74% of this 46.8 billion. The private sector contributes 2%. And what do we mean by private sector? People who are getting their HIV/AIDS treatment and medical aids, their medical aids are paying for that. They also include companies that offer ARVs to their own employees. Not every company is doing that. There are quite a number of employees of private sector companies who come to the government to receive their ARVs, but there are a few where they are offering the ARVs. Now, so the total from the borders of the Republic of South Africa is 76 billion. That constitutes government and private. Now, the remaining 24% is donor funding, divided into 17% contributed for by PEPFAR and 7% by the Global Fund. And there's a breakdown there of PEPFAR funding, which shows the salary bill and the running cost. As you can see, if you do quick addition rather, you realize that it's about 7 billion, 7.5, 7.4 billion. That is being contributed by PEPFAR in the form of 4.6 billion for staffing and 2 billion for operational costs. Thank you. Can we move? Yeah. Now, this slide happened before our meeting on Monday. That even before that Monday meeting, the department took the following actions. Firstly, it hosted a meeting with provincial heads of HIV and TB. Every province has got a head of HIV and TB. Meetings were held with them to discuss this issue. The department also conducted an assessment of immediate impact of the executive order, what impact it will have if everything happens the way it was announced in the beginning. Also requested provinces to develop contingency plans, short and long-term plans. Also commenced engagement with people living with HIV and AIDS. As you know, the structure in South Africa that is in charge of the battle against HIV and AIDS is SANAC, South African National AIDS Council, which is chaired by the deputy president of the country. It has always been chaired by whoever becomes the deputy president of the country, and that person is co-chairing with a member of civil society. Now, within SANAC, there are 18 civil society groups. People living with HIV and AIDS are such a civil society group. And the other 18 will be women group, youth groups, traditional leaders, traditional healers, business, research organizations, and academic institutions, etc., etc. So people living with HIV and AIDS, because they are out of the 18 sector, they are directly affected. Communication started with them, and also communication in terms of engaging SANAC to finalize the sustainability framework. Next. Yes, Chair, that was the last slide. As we said on Monday, we met with the United States Embassy, headed by Ms. Dana Brown, who is a charge d'affaires, and we issued a statement, Chairperson. Beyond what we said on that statement, we really don't have anything more to add. The statement itself summarizes everything that was discussed with the US, and we agreed on a joint statement. And we agreed then that until further notice, until we get any new information, we won't be issuing any more statements. Thank you, Chair. Can I move over to the next issue of unemployment?
That's for you, Minister. Thank you very much. To drink water before you start. Honorable members, please note your comments, your questions on this presentation that has been done thoroughly. We will combine our discussion with this one that Minister is now tackling of unemployed healthcare professionals. But please do write down, and when you start, you will say, on the presentation number 1 about the PEPFAR funding, these are my questions, and then the department and Minister will be able to separate there. Now, Minister, that you have taken a glass of water, please continue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. This is the issue of unemployed health professionals. Chairperson, as you send it to us, because you informed us that there are a number of health professionals, apart from the medical profession, that are unemployed. There are a lot of figures that are going to be presented to you. I will just start explaining the preliminaries to give you the total picture. We can move on to the first slide. Yeah, we are saying there the employment platform demand, that employment demand for both statutory and community service posts has risen in the past 5 years, meaning increased output by local universities since 2020, an increase in the Nelson Mandela Fidel Castro graduate. This is the Cuban program in 2021. We are trying to say that there are streams of health in the health workforce. There are two streams of people who will have just qualified. The first one is internship, which is done for 2 years. During my time, it was only 1 year. Then they increased 2 years. Then later on, community service were added, which added the 3rd year. Both internship and community service are statutory, meaning it does not matter what the situation is. People have to do that. They have got to do internship or community service, especially internship. Internship is because it's still part of training. You cannot do anything else. You can't go into private practice. You can't specialize. You can't work as a medical officer in any hospital. You can't go and work for any private company. Can't even leave the country. You can't do anything. It means you are stuck. And that's why it has to be done, and people have to be absorbed who fall within those categories. And that's why, Chairperson, by October, November last year, we've already finished placing all these people on internship and community service. The problem starts when you complete that, because there was a big debate, which when some of us tried to clarify, even caused hard feelings, that there is absorption after that. There is none, Chairperson, in terms of the law. What is there is that jobs must be advertised and people choose where to go immediately after community service. Now, funding for the health sector, unfortunately, has been declining and cannot cope with current employment, making provision for creation of new posts very difficult. This is how it happened. On the first bullet point, when you say employment platform increased, is because in 2011, Chairperson, I had a meeting with the then Minister of Finance, Minister Bravin Gordon. We agreed that perhaps we need to increase the number of doctors who are producing the country, because at that time, the country was producing 1,200 doctors. And we agreed that that number need to be increased going forward. And we agreed that perhaps it must increase threefold, maybe producing about 3,600 doctors per annum. And this happened in two ways, as is there on the screen. The first way is that many universities increased their output. I remember University of Pretoria actually doubled their intake at that time, and others increased in the manner they could. And the Nelson Mandela Fidel Castro graduate program, the Cuban program, in 2011, it used to have, we used to send 80 students for the whole country. But immediately thereafter, after this agreement, we increased the figure to 1,000 people, 1,000 matriculants who were going to study in Cuba. And at that time, we were not envisaging that the economy will have the problem that it is having. Now, there are other HR retention policies like relative work out of public service, community service, time rather, rural allowance. The review of them are underway, and we have asked that the Treasury do the review, because they are not specific to the Department of Health. They are happening all over the country, only that they have hit the Department of Health much harder because of the type of skills that are there in health. So unemployment of health professionals is linked to the general youth unemployment in the country, which is a problem. Next. Yeah, we just want to show you there the provincial health spending, Chairperson, because we need to explain these things, especially to the portfolio committee. That graph there shows provincial health, where it was in 2011, how it went up and reached a peak in 2020. You may remember that 2020 was the year in which COVID was declared and started. lots and lots of government departments had severe budget cuts with money sent to the Department of Health to fight COVID. I remember at that time I was in agriculture. We lost 500 million rand at the go from our budget because it was being sent to health. That's why the graph reached a peak. But since then, it has been going down. It's still going down, and it's still going down even next year. This situation worries us very much. And that this situation, Chair, is that when Treasury and the Department of Public Service and Administration and mandating committee, a meeting of ministers who mandate Treasury about salary increments, when they have signed a deal with the unions, Treasury will say we can afford this much and the rest the provinces must carry. Now, this situation has been there for at least a decade. And what provinces do, because they are not giving any extra money, they are just saying, look, carry the burden. We are giving you so much. If Treasury said we are increasing by 6%, they might say we'll pay for the other 3%, the remaining 3% provinces must see to finish. Now, many provinces used money for goods and services, and they've now reached a crescendo. They can no longer use that money. They were using money for goods and services for employment purposes. They are no longer able to do that because many of them are in dire straits as far as goods and services are concerned. You do hear that all the time. This and that province running out of such and such a commodity, running out of this and that, because this is what has been happening. And we really believe we will be helped if the graph you see there can start changing. And before that, it will be really a minefield. Next, Chair, I thought I would just have to give that background for you to understand the problems in which you are. I'll give over to the DG, if it is him, to come up with this with the slide that shows numbers.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Dr. Luvuo Bayeni, our Chief Director for Human Resources for Health, will now take over. Dr. Bayeni.
Thank you very much, DG. Greetings to the honorable members, and greetings to the Minister, Deputy Minister, and the departmental representatives, executive. I would like to take over from where the Minister has left off in terms of the introduction, and just read through and make the committee understand in terms of our projections and our history. We have now projected on this slide that what the Minister spoke about absorption, which is what we refer to as statutory obligatory posts, and the projections are a reflection of what has been happening from 2016 up until 2024 with that incremental number as projected for both medical interns as well as the medical community service doctors. Next one, please. Thank you. The next slide also reflects for us what has also happened to what we refer to as the post-community service employment. This is the period that the Minister was referring to, that it has been given a wrong impression of automatic absorption, whereas it ought to follow the normal recruitment processes of the department as prescribed by the TPSA and labor relations. So those are the projections in terms of the numbers, and again we have been showing some incremental uptake up to 2024. We can confirm that the appointments for current year, which is 2025, which will also reflect only for January, are still underway. There has been an expression from provinces on the recruitment processes, and we are still monitoring that progress in terms of the provincial performances. Thank you. We have also made an effort to ensure that we give a true picture in terms of the healthcare professionals that we refer to as HCPs, so that we also do assist in terms of information, and also realizing that it is not only the doctors that are a concern for the department, but also all the other health professionals. And that is a reflection in terms of how we have been doing, even with their own statutory placement demands in terms of the other professionals, as we had obliged to say we would absorb or appoint them under statutory professionals as community services. However, the same challenge we have been having in terms of after they appointment, as it will also rely on the normal recruitment processes obviously being informed and influenced by the provincial budgeting and financial availability at the times. So we have projected how we have been doing in terms of appointing these professionals, and as you can see that some of the numbers and categories are not as impressive as we would like them to be, especially when it comes to rehabilitation services as well as other support, clinical support services in terms of where we would like to summarize, as mentioned by the Minister in his opening. We also would like, in terms of an employment positions post-community service, as was mentioned earlier on, that we would still follow the recruitment processes of an advert, and that is given as an opportunity to everyone who then meets the criteria thereof. And of course, we are also acknowledging that serious problems of austerity and fiscal consolidation measures introduced by the National Treasury have also been playing a huge role in terms of the performance post-community services. And of course, the stringent measures implemented to control advertising and filling of positions, including the keynote functions to avoid over expenditure on compensation of employees, are also a limitation in terms of even the pace. As it is now, we do know that provinces have indicated posts that they would like to fill. However, the process thereof does have its own limitations. In terms of mitigating, the department continuously engages National Treasury at ministerial level on the persistence of this challenge. The provincial departments have prioritized posts in their annual recruitment plans where the funding permits. And also lastly is that the provinces are also make use of the posts that we do avail that are mandatory of internship and community service program as part of ensuring that we don't get to a point where service will then be seen to be collapsing. But that is all we have prepared for today. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairman.
Okay. I want us to check, Minister, if we can then start, and you'll come back later, or you want to, after Dr. Bayen, you want to complete?
Yeah, I just want to report that, as you are aware, immediately after the doctors marched also in the Eastern Cape, starting with the Eastern Cape, we did conduct Treasury on this matter and wrote a letter to explain some of these shortages, and calculated that for the medical profession, I'm saying so because if you remember in the beginning, the marches were done by the medical professionals, that means by the doctors. At that time, the calculation was that you needed 1,900 to advertise all the jobs. At the moment, provinces have only been able to advertise 350, and those posts have not yet been filled. Doctors have been encouraged to apply for them. They are still going to be filled, and so there will be a many number of 1,500 whose total is 1.9 million. But as you can see, the department has then given you the total of all the healthcare professionals who have completed, and as we said, the numbers are there. Now, on our own, there is not much we are able to do except to plead to the Treasury and ask a number of provinces. For instance, there are provinces which did not fill their internship post, as it was said, whether they can turn those posts into post-community service. That means the post that needs to be advertised and filled in the manner in which you fill any post in the public service, by advertising, people applying, being interviewed, and winning, and being appointed if they are successful. So that's where we are, unfortunately, Chairperson. And we're still waiting, and we're hoping perhaps in